New animated movie, The Incredibles, which I saw the other day, and it's fantastic.
The Oscar goes to The Incredibles.
This interview is because of the movie The Incredibles.
Why?
It starts off with the interviews.
Everyone loves The Incredibles, including me, because the Elastigirl's hips. Because it's a vivid, fascinating story with charming characters and an important message about how important family is. But that's not even why many people love The Incredibles. It's just another Pixar project. No worse, but also no better than other iconic works of the studio. And besides the plot, they don't really see the difference between The Incredibles and, relatively speaking, the Monster Corporation. But there is a difference, and it's huge. At one time, The Incredibles became, and still remains, Pixar's most unconventional and daring project. This is a cartoon that literally no one believed in, but in the end it broke all possible patterns of the genre, made a real technological revolution, and, yes, changed the whole world of animation. Pixar works like this. You see the screensaver, and you have no doubt that you are about to watch a great movie. Pixar's cartoon studio is a brand, but I'm sure most people don't even know who's creating these projects. This is largely because Pixar cartoons are a collective creation in the truest sense of the word. Each cartoon often has 2 or even 3 directors, as many screenwriters, and a bunch of talented and incredibly creative people who are trying to figure out how to make the audience empathize. This is how the studio has been working since its inception. And then Brad Bird came along.
God, we're on the journey now, baby.
Brad Bird.
Brad Bird.
Brad Bird.
Brad Bird.
What could go wrong? And then I come out. Wah, wah, wah.
In the 90s, Warner Brothers Studio wanted to compete with Disney and DreamWorks in the field of animation and hired Bird to make a cartoon for them about the friendship of a boy and a giant alien robot. Bird, who got an internship at Disney at the age of 14 thanks to a homemade film, was already considered a veteran of animation at that time. For example, he worked on The Simpsons for 8 seasons, and even came up with the character Sideshow Bob. But this project was Bird's full-length debut. Making any movie is not an easy walk. It's a nerve-wracking, exhausting process.
Oh, I respect you, Max, but you're amateurs!
But the conditions Bird found himself in were even worse. Warner Brothers really wanted to get ahead of Disney, but they didn't want to shell out much.
We had to make the film with 1/3 of the budget and in half the time of a typical animated feature. Disney had 5 years, we had 2.5.
Add to this the fact that Bird had to defend his own vision in front of a studio that always didn't like something. Even for an experienced director, this would be an impossible task. But he did it.
Really fine work. Terrific animation, and just to put it in context, Tarzan started a year before us, and they'll be finished with animation in 3 weeks. With 40 more animators. So, they're pussies!
And he turned out to be more than just a cartoon. He redid the original book, largely reflecting on the death of his sister, who was shot by her own husband. This is how the main motive of the film was born. What if a weapon had a soul and didn't want to be a weapon? This is how a subtle, touching story about empathy appeared. The Iron Giant. The test screenings were great, and Bird was confident that he had finally created what he dreamed of. But the film failed at the box office. Why? The studio did not believe in the project, and began to advertise it at least 4 months before the release. And it was 1999, one of the best years in the history of cinema. Back then, The Matrix, The Sixth Sense, Star Wars were released in cinemas. The Iron Giant was doomed. But pretty quickly, the cartoon gained cult status for its profound, atypical statement for children's animation. And now it is considered a true classic, as evidenced at least by his appearance in Spielberg's pop cultural vinaigrette, Ready Player One. But in the early noughties, everything was different. For the entire industry, Brad Bird was a 40-year-old loser whose multi-million-dollar project collapsed. And only Pixar saw in him not a down pilot, but an innovator who was just unlucky. And if you give him another chance, he will definitely break the industry.
For them to ask me to do that when they'd had nothing but successes was amazing to me.
They believed in him so much that they gave him sole direction, unprecedented precedent for Pixar. They let him write the script himself. But there was a problem. Bird has never worked with 3D animation. The technical part of the superfamily is a separate story.
Our whole film was constructed of things, all the things that computers were still bad at. They were bad at humans, they were bad at hair, they were bad at cloth, they were bad at water, they were bad at fire, and I said, hey, I got this idea for a film filled with humans and cloth and fire and water, and that's all it is.
Have you ever wondered why the heroes of Pixar's early projects were toys, ants, and fish? Because even now, one of the most difficult tasks of 3D animation remains the creation of realistic people. And in The Incredibles, all the characters are human. For the first time in Pixar's history.
One of the big issues was, oh man, we got humans.
Our audience looks at a human being in the mirror every single day. And if you don't do it just right, it won't be believable to the audience.
In the early noughties, it was considered so difficult to make such a cartoon that in the process of preparation it turned out there are simply no suitable programs for this. I had to write special software from scratch. But that's not all. Buzz is a toy, he only has clothes. Sally is a furry monster, no clothes are needed. Nemo is generally a fish. And here, everyone's clothes are moving, wrinkling, and getting wet.
We have something like 95 costume changes.
They had to look like different kinds of material.
Not just t-shirts, but suits and shirts and ties and belts and pants and all of them interacting with each other.
You know, that was huge. They all have hair.
Long hair is really hard. What really happens is you have millions of hairs that are interacting with each other, and that's what gives it its shape.
In Monster Corporation, Boo had pigtails, a purely technical solution, because they are easier to animate.
Long, black, dark hair, which has to move and move believably. The big brain guys who run the simulator, the thing that makes the hair move, finally just sat across the table and said, well, John, I got to tell you, long hair is theoretical at this point. Whoa, time out, theoretical? The movie comes out in less than a year. Whoever thought about making movies like this was out of their minds.
The Incredibles is not just a superhero story, but a story based on spy movies. And what does James Bond do? Traveling. So The Incredibles has become Pixar's most diverse cartoon in terms of locations. Monsters Corporation has 50 locations, Finding Nemo 70. The Incredibles, more than 200, and radically different, from a boring office to tropical jungles and lava lakes.
The Incredibles is not only an incredible film, but it's an incredible technological feat as well.
But the revolution was not only in technology, but also in the plot. From the first frames, stylized like an old TV show.
What if you had a superhero who was not able to be a superhero and is a little older and kind of frustrated?
Bird seems to be saying, I don't care about your patterns. In the world of The Incredibles, superheroes are ordinary people. They may not get along with children, get jealous, or die of stupidity, for example, because of a cape. And the main character, Mr. Incredible, is not a god, just a man with a potbelly in the midst of a midlife crisis who tolerates a stupid boss, hates his job, dreams of the past. And the main villain doesn't want to take over the world. He just wanted to be a hero, but he was rejected. The syndrome wouldn't have appeared if Exceptional hadn't behaved like an asshole and catapulted the fan kid out of the car. Putting it all together, it becomes obvious that The Incredibles is one of the first deconstructions of the superhero genre. The Incredibles came out earlier. The Dark Knight, Watchmen, The Boys. Not bad for a children's cartoon. So I really hope that you, if not today then tomorrow, will review The Incredibles with a fresh look, and will be able to evaluate this film as it truly deserves.
I feel like you've completed a long journey. It may not be fun to go, through the Gobi Desert, but it's kind of cool to say that I came out the other end.